Welcome to the county and state ballot measure overview presented by the League of Women Voters, Boulder County. For those that are just joining us, I'm Stacy Johnson, volunteer member and voter service director for the League of Women Voters, Boulder County. For today's presentation, the panel consists of Judy Mars Dixon, our ballot issues coordinator for the Boulder League, and Judy's fellow team members, Peggy Leach and Deborah Hayes. Helping us with Spanish language interpretation is Roosevelt Rice and Kelly Music, and assisting us with the Spanish language recording is fellow league member Molly Saunders. For those in the audience not familiar with the League of Women Voters, we are a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights. And we also work to ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. To remain nonpartisan, the League never supports or opposes political candidates or parties. Although we are nonpartisan, we work to empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy, education, and through litigation at the local, state, and national levels. This presentation during the time slot of 3:30 to 4 p.m. will cover county and state ballot measures that will appear on the 2023 election ballot. Following this presentation, there will be a ballot measure overview for community members and voters in Superior and Louisville. Today's forum does not include any outside speakers who are in favor or who are against any of the ballot measures that will be covered. The presenters will take a few minutes to explain each ballot measure, and then they will address questions submitted through the chat towards the end of each of their presentations of ballot measures. To get us started, I now turn it over to Deborah Hayes, who will cover ballot measure 1A for Boulder County voters.
Okay, thank you, Stacy. Both of the Boulder County issues this year are about taxes, so they're covered in the Boulder County, what's called the Tabor booklet that you got in the mail. What I'm going to say is full of so many numbers, I can't help but, advise you to look at our written material, which is at LWBVC.org. And we have a whole page where you can click on whatever district you're looking for, whatever city or county, and see our written material. So County 1A was referred by the county commissioners, and it's to extend a 0.0005% sales and use tax for 15 years, starting in 2025. That's 5 cents on a $100 purchase. The revenues from this tax would be used for acquiring open space, improving it, managing it, and maintaining it. It will expire if 1A doesn't pass. This 0.05% tax will expire at the end of 2024. Now, this tax originated in November of 1993, and it started out, it is a 0.25% sales and use tax for open space, or 25 cents on a $100 purchase. When it was about to expire, voters approved an extension of part of it, the 10 cents on $100. That is, and that left of that 10.10%, half, or 0.05%, was approved to be in effect for perpetuity. So it's not in question in 1A. The other 0.05% is what we're talking about. The current total of county taxes for open space is 0.475%, or 47.5 cents on a $100 purchase. So the other portions to make up the 0.475, besides the 0.05, are set to expire in various years, 2029, some of it in 2030, and some of it expires in 2034. So open space in the county, how are the revenues used? The county now owns 116,000 acres. That includes 41,000 acres of forest habitat, 40,000 in conservation easements, and 25,000 acres in agricultural lands. Maintenance of all this open space, including 120 trail miles and 350 historic structures, is definitely required, and this effort involves approximately 2,750 volunteers, 2,750 volunteers. The county estimates that they will need another 10,000 acres in focused acquisitions, and then acquisitions will probably end. These acquisitions involve land, water rights, trail connections, and requests from municipalities for buffer zones. Once the acquisitions end, the revenues from this tax will go toward improving, managing, and maintaining the open space. So those in favor of 1A say the funds are really needed to continue focused acquisitions, enhanced maintenance needs, and dynamic community outreach. Preserved open space is a fundamental shared value of the citizens of Boulder County, and a tax extension is a cost-effective method of obtaining revenues for open space purposes without an increase in the total cumulative countywide sales and use tax rate. Those opposed to 1A say there shouldn't be any more acquisitions. Funds for management of agricultural lands are being badly misused, and the Parks and Open Space program is not transparent and accountable. So that's 1A. Are there questions?
If anybody has a question for Deborah, please place your question in the chat.
Well, we can, if you think of something, we'll come back to it at the very end. But in the meantime, I'll call on Judy to talk about County Issue 1B.
Thank you, Deborah. The question 1B is about affordable housing. This is a sales and use tax revenue change. So this is not a new tax. Rather, the county commissioners are asking the voters to approve a repurposing of the tax. So the initial tax was approved by the voters in 2018, and we're talking about a 0.185% sales tax, which equates to 18.5 cents on a $100 purchase. So the tax is currently for offender alternative sentencing and offender management programs and services. And the commissioners are asking that this be repurposed for affordable housing. And when we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about a whole host of things involved in that: development, operations, acquisition, preservation, renovation, maintenance, and construction of homes for sale and for rent for low and moderate income folks, households. This also is focusing on the local workforce. So the one of the interesting points that I found in researching this is that 65% of Boulder County workers drive alone to work, and the average drive time is 24 minutes. The view behind this question is that there is a need for a dedicated, reliable source of funding to increase affordable housing as the need continues to escalate. Boulder County and the municipalities within it set a goal of 12% affordable housing throughout the county by 2035. Without this repurposed tax, which would begin in 2025 as it's currently set to expire at the end of 24. So going on through 2039, without it, the amount of affordable housing by 2035 is expected to be about 7.3%. With it, there is the view that the goal will be achieved. So those in favor say that the funds can help with the programs, that is, that require matching funds. Another point in favor is that the availability of quality and affordable housing, homes for sale and for rent, is a vital component of our community. And then finally, as I indicated before, it is a way to meet the goal of 12%. And no identified organized opposition has been found. Any questions about 1B? That's a good question. The question is, why did they change the repurpose of the tax? Did the child program get all taken care of? And that's a great question. And I am sorry to say, I do not know specifically if that is the case. We can look that up and we can include it in our materials if we get a specific, definite answer.
There's another question that came through. Before we continue, so Judy, if there's updates to the information, where should folks look for updates? Or, we had this previous question here. Why did the change the purpose for the tax? Like, if you're going to get some more information on that, where would this person find that information?
Can we update it on our website?
Okay, and that's under the 2023 elections page?
Yes.
Primarily? Okay. Another question came through is, what would happen to the programs that would be defunded?
Well, it's the same question. I'm not sure if this repurposing means that the current offender programs are being defunded. So that's something we don't want to we don't want to jump to that conclusion because we don't know. They could be taken care of. There could be other funding. The goals could be achieved. We don't know. So let me look it up, see if I can find it. I haven't found it before now. And if I do, we will put it on our website.
I'll just say that I'm pretty sure that the tax that was passed in 2018 was a temporary tax. Mm-hmm. To develop some new facilities, and that should all be done by the end of 2024. And that's why it was set to expire at that time.
Mm-hmm. Which means that the goals of that original tax could be achieved very shortly. We'll verify that. All right. Any other questions? If not, let's go to the first state proposition and Peggy Leach.
All right. I'm the one that's doing the screen sharing, so I got a little wild with my cursor a little minute ago, but anyway, back on track again. So Proposition HH is probably the most famous ballot issue this year. And it was referred to the voters by the state legislature. It's incredibly complicated. And the whole topic of property taxes is also very complicated. But they did this as a reaction to property valuations around the state going up by around 40%. So there's a list of check marks here of things it's supposed to do, and I'll kind of address each one of them here. On property tax relief, HH will not lower taxes from last year's amounts. It will just reduce the expected increase that will come from increased property valuations that I just talked about. So property taxes are calculated on 3 factors. First, there's the valuation from the county assessor, such as $1 million for a property. Then there's an assessed value, which is a much smaller amount that the tax is based on. And then the mill levy rate, which is $1 for every $1,000 in assessed value. So HH would lower the residential assessment rate. So that's the amount that the $1 million gets multiplied by. That rate is currently set to be 6.97%, and it would be lowered to 6.7% for 10 years. It would also subtract $50,000 from the valuation of the 2023 taxes and $40,000 for the next 10 years through 2032. So with all of that, for a $1 million home, the assessed value would be reduced from $69,750 to $63,650, which is an 8.75% decrease in the assessed value. And that means less taxes would be collected. On the senior exemption being portable, that means portable to a new house. So currently, seniors are eligible for an exemption of the first $100,000 of the value of their house from taxation if they've owned the house for at least 10 years. And this provides for the possibility of downsizing and not losing the exemption just because you move. Then on funds for education and local governments. So interestingly, this is a state ballot issue, but the state does not collect any property taxes. It is all collected by school districts, city and county governments, fire districts, and other special districts. So if HH passes, the revenue for these entities is reduced by that reduced assessment rate that I talked about. So HH would have the state of Colorado reimburse the school districts and local governments for the reduced revenue. This would be paid for by reduced TABOR refunds. The TABOR refund, which is currently based on, there's a cap on it every year of, the last year's cap plus inflation plus population growth. Well, this would be, the TABOR cap would be increased by 1% each year for the next 10 years. Then limiting tax revenue growth. It prevents many local taxing authorities from collecting more property tax revenue each year above the rate of inflation without holding a public hearing and passing an ordinance or resolution. So local taxing districts that don't override the limit must temporarily lower their mill levy rate or refund taxpayers any revenue collected over the limit. School districts, which account for the majority of Coloradans' property tax bill, and home rule jurisdictions would be exempt from that limit. And then equalizes TABOR refunds. Every taxpayer next year would receive the same refund of approximately $832 instead of the refund being based on income. So this slide basically summarizes what we basically said. And so no maintains the current law for property taxes, table refunds, and state and local government revenue limits. So when it says current law, that means as it is now with those increased property valuations. Those in favor of this say that HH would relieve property tax bills while limiting the impact on local services. It makes the senior homestead exemption portable, so seniors can keep it when they move. It funds schools by letting the state retain additional revenue that it already collects. It provides equitable property tax relief for owner-occupied homes. Increased table refunds for the first year to taxpayers earning under $100,000. Many of them are renters. And then those opposed say that HH allows the state budget to grow possibly by as much as $2.2 billion in 2032. It may not benefit renters after the first year if landlords do not pass along their property tax savings. It cuts or possibly eliminates future Tabor refunds. And it adds complexity to an already confusing tax system. Supporting this is a group called Property Tax Relief Now. Opposed is Colorado Municipal League, a Tabor Coalition, No on HH, Taxpayers for a Better Deal, Americans for Prosperity, and some others. So are there any questions on this? I'm not sure I can answer them, but we'll see.
The question, what would, oops, sorry, there isn't a question.
Okay, I know this is very confusing for me. I understand somewhat what it's going to do. I think there's a lot of unknowns, whether certain entities will lower their mill levy so that they don't receive a windfall. Different unanswered questions about this.
There's a question that came through, Peggy. I don't know if you saw that.
Okay, the district and limits was quite complicated. I think I'll have to read it to completely understand it. I assume it will be typed up on your page. I didn't understand the senior exemption. You said it was portable. But what else would change? Well, it looks like Deborah's typing an answer. As far as the senior exemption, with that, there's nothing else about the senior exemption other than the fact that if somebody buys a different house, so they've already had the exemption, then they buy a different house, they can now keep the exemption on their new house instead of having to wait another 10 years to live in that house. Not sure what you mean about the district and limits. Well, so a lot of districts will be limited to collecting property tax. They can't collect it above the rate of inflation without holding a public hearing, or they may need to lower the mill levy. But school districts are not subject to that restriction, so they can keep everything if they want to. Everything from the state.
I think it's time to move on to the next ballot measure.
Okay. Yeah, let me pass on to Judy then.
Sure.
Whoop.
So now we're to the second state proposition. There are only two on the ballot. This is II. I think this is far less complicated than HH. This is a question, again, referred by the state legislature that is asking to use the overage of over $20 million already collected on taxing tobacco and nicotine products, to use that money for preschool programs, rather than to refund it to the nicotine and tobacco wholesalers and distributors. So a yes vote on II means that the state can keep and spend the overage of over 20 million that's already been collected on the sales for cigarettes and tobacco and nicotine products, and including the interest. And they can maintain the current tax rate on these products and use the funds for preschool. So only on preschool. A no vote means that the overage over 20 million that's already been collected would be refunded to the wholesalers and the distributors, and that the tax rate will need to be reduced. So in 2020, voters approved taxing these products to fund preschool programs. And in the first year, the tax that was collected exceeded the Legislative Council Blue Book projections, which is how the state projects how much money is going to come in as a result. And so according to Tabor requires that the state refund the overage, or the voters must approve a question such as this. Now, those in favor say that those in favor say that the preschools is a great way to use these increased taxes, and that the tax should stay where it is. The no vote, I don't have any points of opposition, but I can tell you that the Centennial Institute, which is a think tank in Colorado, sent to who they communicate with, their members, to vote no on this. So, any questions about II?
There was a question previously, what is a mill levy? And I'm just going to read the definition from what I'm seeing. The most simplified definition I'm finding is from the Broomfield assessor website. The mill levy is a tax rate used to calculate the tax bills of individual properties within a tax area or district. Each taxing authority determines how much revenue they require from property taxes and divides that by the total assessed value of the properties within their established boundaries and supplied by the assessor. The resulting tax rate is multiplied by 1,000 to come up with the mill levy. I don't know if Deborah, Peggy, or Judy have a more simplified way of defining that. What is a mill levy?
Yeah, it's basically the amount that the assessed value is multiplied by, and then you divide it by 1,000 because it's a mill, and then that's what your tax is.
Yeah. There's another question about Prop II, which basically says you say it's for preschool playgrounds, but your sheet says preschool programs. If I said playgrounds, I misspoke. It's for preschool programs.
Okay, we're topping the hour here, so I'm going to wrap up this portion of, and please try to keep questions coming. So to wrap up this presentation covering the county and state ballot measures, I'd like to thank Judy, Peggy, and Deborah and their preparations for today's forum. A huge thank you also goes out to our 2023 election sponsors, Elevations Credit Union, Christina's Luxuries, GG and Company Pet Products, Wolfgang Boulder, Bragg's Consignments, and individual sponsors, C. James Levitt, Simmons Family, Laura Holloway, and Maria Dolores Young. Please note this presentation will be available on the League of Women Voters Boulder County website and the League's YouTube channel later this week and through Election Day. The presentation will also be available on the League's online voters guide, vote411.org, where voters can find information on candidates, candidate responses to questions curated by the League, and information about other ballot measures. We also encourage the public to visit LWBVC.org for more information on all other upcoming forum events, including candidate forums. And finally, I would like to thank you, the viewer of this presentation. As a League member, I like to stress the importance that elections are our chance to stand up for what matters most to us and to have an impact on the issues that affect us, especially issues impacting our communities, our families, our loved ones, and our future. The League of Women Voters believes in empowering you, the voter, with straightforward information so your voice will be heard. Thank you for attending this presentation and being an informed voter. And we will now transition to the next ballot measure presentation that will begin here shortly.